friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And we've been having some really nice weather here in Rain Country. We do get these occasional nice stretches of sunny weather in the spring, and then it goes back to heavy rains again. So we've been taking advantage of these nice days, hanging the laundry outside and getting out and harvesting some of the herbs that are starting to take off because of the sun. Now here's something to know. I've got here some rosemary and some thyme. Both of these are from the south side of the house. These are the ones that grow right up against the house, and again they're facing south. They stay fairly sheltered from the bad weather and too much rain, and that's why these do really well here. My other rosemary plants are on the west side over here, and they don't get a lot of sun this time of the year, so they haven't started taking off yet. So it is nice to have some growing in different places, because not only does it help me watch how things grow and make those observances for each plant, I can start harvesting some things early and then worry about the other ones when they start taking off later on. So if you live in a very cool and wet climate like I do, growing things like rosemary and thyme can be a little bit challenging. So it might take some time to find the best places to grow them, because neither one of them like too much water. They tend to grow best in drier climates, but you can grow them in climates like ours. Using a good well-draining soil can help, but even then around here it can still be too wet. I've tried growing them in hanging pots thinking that would let them drain well, and they did okay during the summer, but then through the winter they still died. So I found for us the best place for both of these is up next to the house, or any place where they can stay sheltered. Now I do grow some thyme, as you might have seen in previous videos, in pots up against the house on this back side, and those are just starting to grow. They don't get as much sun as this one. So this one, here's a picture of it here that I just took before I harvested a bunch off, so you can see what it looked like. I should have put my hand in there so you get a better idea of the size, but if you look at the size of how tiny the leaves are, that one has just really been taken off, where the other ones are just slowly starting to come along. Same thing with this rosemary. So right here I just harvested all this morning. This is what I cut off of that one thyme plant. And I have several more out there, but this is the common thyme. I grow a few different varieties, and right now this common one is the one that's really taking off. My Foxley, which is one of my very favorites, that one, a couple of them are starting to grow, but some of the others are just really sluggish. But if you're interested in more information on thyme and the kinds that I grow, I think I've since added a new thyme to that since I shot that video. But I'll go ahead and link to the video down below that I did last year on thyme, its uses and benefits. So anyway, today those are the two main things I harvested, and of course I'm still harvesting dandelion flowers. Now these ones, you might notice they look a little funny. That's because these are the ones I did have some in here that were harvested from the yard or in places where people or animals might have walked. And so I did spray these down lightly with a little bit of my own homemade citrus vinegar. And then I just let that sit on there for a few minutes, and then I gently rinse it off. I do not wash my herbs. In fact, none of these I've even rinsed. Most of my herbs I do not even rinse. Just depends on where they're growing, or if I think anything may have peed on them, or it has a lot of dust buildup from wherever, which we don't get a lot of dust around here. We get a lot of mud and rust. Those are the two main things. But anyway, I might rinse them just depending on where they are or what they've been exposed to, just like these. Most of these in here didn't need to be rinsed off, just a few of them, but I wasn't going to keep track of which was which. So I just threw them all in the colander together, sprayed them down, then rinsed them off. So now I'm going to just put these around on my tray, and you can see here I have my own little fabric cutouts. This does a few different things. I came up with this idea, I think it was last year or the year before, I can't remember. And I love it. So I've made a ton of these things. And basically I just took an old cotton sheet and cut it out. And one of the things this does is it helps limit the plastic exposure to my food and my herbs. It contains everything. So when you have little small bits, like thyme leaves are really tiny. I don't typically pull them off the stem until after they're dry. Same thing with the rosemary. I just cut the whole thing and then pull them off the stem after they're dry, because a lot easier then. Anyway, those are things that can easily fall through, and instead of having to use those little mesh covers you can get, which is just even more plastic, this actually contains better and speeds up the dehydration time, believe it or not, because I found that this thin layer of cotton fabric to be a lot more breathable than a plastic mesh layer that goes over the top, plus contains the items a lot better. And I think also, and this is another hypothesis I've had, is that because like these are still pretty wet from me rinsing them off, because that cotton also absorbs some of the moisture from whatever you're dehydrating and then spreads it out across the fabric, and cotton sheets dry very quickly. And anyone who ever hangs their laundry will know this. You hang those sheets out and they're dry in no time. You hang a pair of jeans out at the same time, they might be out there for 8 to 10 hours before they're dry. Of course, it depends on your climate and how much sun and how hot it is and so on, and humid. We tend to be wet and humid. Nice days are humid and non-nice days are wet. So that's just the way it is around here. That's why hanging herbs to dry in any way doesn't work best for us out here, because it's just too humid and they don't dehydrate fast enough. So using an electric dehydrator when we have plenty of sun like we do right now, so we're running it off the solar power, or using the wood stove dehydrator that Patrick built when we have fires going. But it's been nice enough now that we've been letting the fire die in the morning and then building again in the evening. So now I'm starting to run my electric dehydrator. So again, I'll have a video coming out within maybe about 2 weeks about dehydrators, kinds you can build, make, buy, etc. And I'll cover all that in there. So be watching for that. And then I also have a video on how I made these little cloth covers. You can choose to hem them or not. It depends on the fabric you use. These, when you're using cotton sheets, they really don't need to be hemmed. You just cut them out to fit whatever your tray is. And they're perfect. And you just wash and reuse. And I don't wash them every time I use them, especially when I'm doing herbs like this. I just shake them out and then put more herbs on there and use them again. Now, if I'm dehydrating things like apples and stuff like that, yes, I will wash them after I use them. So those are the 3 herbs that I'm going to dehydrate. I haven't decided yet on the stinging nettle, because I still actually have quite a number of jars of stinging nettle, because the past couple of years I was putting up lots and lots of jars of stinging nettle and just not working through them fast enough. So this year I might just focus on allowing it to get plenty of seed to put up on our store this year, because I failed to do that last year, and using it fresh as much as possible. So yes, you can use your stinging nettle in teas, in soups. You can use it in just about anything. Once it's cooked in any form, even dehydrated, the venom in the nettle is pretty much neutralized, and so you don't have to worry about it. But I do actually like eating nettle fresh. So you can actually eat nettle straight off the plant. You can see I'm handling this barehanded. If you're careful, you can do that. But also if you're very, very sensitive or allergic to nettle, you're going to have a stronger reaction to it than some of us. So I have found the more I handle it, the tougher I get. So there is a trick to it. So when it's on the plant, I actually took some pictures last year. I might go ahead and insert in here. The needles are not on the front side of the leaf. They're on the back side of the leaf. So you can actually grab the leaf like this, as long as you don't pinch it hard. If you pinch it too hard, you're not gentle enough, then the needles will sting through from the back side to the front. You just fold it up carefully like this, trying to get all those needles on the inside, and then you can just chomp it down and just eat it. And I love the taste and smell of fresh nettle. And it's so nourishing to the body. Now, I have a video I did a couple of years ago on nettle and the many uses, and I'm always, just like with anything else through the years, find more ways to use it. It's really good added to things like stir fries. That's one of my favorite things. Like here's a picture I took, I think last year, where I used some fresh nettle and then just stir fried it with some other herbs and things from the garden, and then added the rice and then browned that a little bit, and boy, that was really good. I did an old video of macaroni and cheese, hamburger mac and cheese, and I believe in that video I used fresh nettle in that one too. So you can take it, chop it up, You might want to wear gloves, but just be careful the kind of gloves you wear, because it can still, if you're really concerned about it, it can actually sting through certain kind of gloves, even those neoprene ones. So you might want to even double layer it if you're going to chop it. But I can handle it pretty good. In fact, when I harvested this, I did it all barehanded. I'm just careful. I put the colander under there and just cut it. Okay, so then I'm going to put these on my dehydrator, and usually when I dehydrate, I put the things that dehydrate the slowest, that take the longest, on the top, which in this case would be the dandelion flowers. Now the stems on the thyme and the rosemary will take a while to dry too, but I'm not so worried about that because the stems can be pretty woody, especially some of these, because I cut back some older parts just to prune that back as well. Even though there's a lot of new rosemary leaf growth on those, I did want to cut those back, and so the plant can bush out better that way and get a lot more fresh young growth coming in. If you pull all the leaves off your stems, you can take those stems and then add them to a tea instead of tossing them, because that's something, if no matter how woody they are, in fact the more woody they are, the more you're going to cook your tea a little bit to pull the nutrients and flavor out of there. So that's a lot of times what I'll do with stems, like say peppermint. When I start dehydrating my peppermint, I'll just cut it and put the whole thing on there, and then when the leaves are all dry, I'll pull them off and then take the stems and make a pot of tea that night out of the stems, because there's lots of flavor in those stems as well. I might still go ahead and dehydrate up at least a quart of nettle this year. I don't know, I got to go back and count my jars again, but I'm looking more at collecting and saving the seeds mostly for the store, but the seeds are beneficial too. You can eat those, all right? So if you want to save them to eat, there's lots of nutrients in those. But anyway, I recommend you check out my videos on the dandelion, the thyme. I haven't done one on rosemary yet, but I hope to this year, and the nettle. I'll link to all three of those ones down below, as well as the one on the cloth covers. And if I forget anything, just remind me in a comment down below. And I almost forgot to mention that the temperature of your herbs, typically, I will set it at about 110 degrees for herbs. You can go lower. You don't really want to go higher than that unless they're real heavy, woody type herbs. So more delicate herbs need to be 95 to 105 is the standard. I usually go 110, like I said, and put the things that take longer on the top, the more delicate ones on the bottom. If you're doing a setup like this, if you're using something where the heat comes from the back, like an Excalibur, then consider putting your more delicate things towards the front of your trays, and the things that take longer towards the back. Oh yes, and share with us down below, what are you harvesting this week to put into your food storage, or to save for medicinal uses, or just seasoning your food to add flavor and prevent food fatigue. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.